Welcome back to Behind the Counter Pharmacy and Beyond, the podcast where real stories meet real business lessons. I'm your host, Solomon Abode, and in today's episode, we're diving into something that so many founders, especially those of us who built our businesses from the ground up, struggle with: delegating and letting go, trusting others to take the reins. Because I learned this the hard way that trying to do everything yourself is not just unsustainable, it's dangerous. In the last episode, I shared how growth nearly broke us. We went from one pharmacy to four, and the growing pains were very real. If you haven't listened to episode 6 yet, I highly recommend checking it out. It really sets the stage for today's conversation, especially if you're at the point in your business where growth is starting to feel more painful than promising. If you enjoy the podcast, don't forget to hit follow or subscribe depending on where you're listening so you can stay updated on every new episode. I also welcome your feedback. Let me know what you like and what you think I can improve. Your input is valuable, and I appreciate every single listener. Thank you for being here. In the early days and for the first few years of running my business, I literally thought being a good leader meant doing everything myself. I believed that the more I did, the more I could control the outcome. After all, it was my vision, my sacrifice, my name on the business, and why wouldn't I want to do that, right? I was the first to open the shutters and the last to lock up at night. Every single decision, every supplier, every rota, it all ran through me. I was involved in every single part of the business, and nothing happened without my approval. And at first, that felt great. It felt like I was proving how committed I was, like I was protecting the business by staying in the thick of it. I even managed to convince myself, and a lot of founders are in this position as well, that no one else could ever run the business better than me. And here is the truth I had to learn the hard way. When you do everything, you become the bottleneck. I was manually running payroll, handling stock orders, replying to every email, approving every single shift change. It felt like dedication, but in reality, it was holding us back. And the worst part of it was that I was exhausted, genuinely exhausted. My family was seeing less of me. I was constantly stressed. And my team, well, they didn't feel empowered. They actually felt the opposite. They felt micromanaged. I was focusing on the small things and missing the big picture. I told myself I was protecting the business, but the reality was simple. I was just afraid. I was afraid that no one else would care as much as I did about the business. I was afraid that if I stepped back, everything would fall apart. We began losing ground in the original branches. The very foundation we'd built was starting to shake. The exhaustion caught up with me when we saw Discover branches. At that point, I should have felt relief, but instead, I felt lost, and I knew something had to change immediately. That was my turning point. I'd spent so long being involved in every single detail that I didn't know how to lead without doing. There's a quote I love from Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, which says, "If your dreams don't scare you, then they're not big enough." And Nelson Mandela said this best: "The brave man is not he who doesn't feel afraid, but he who conquers that fear." You will always feel fear. You will feel afraid, but it's all about conquering the fear. What do you do when you feel the fear? What did we do? We went back to the drawing board and asked ourselves a few questions. One, what kind of business do we want to build over the next 5 years? Can we achieve that operating the way we were operating? And if we doubled in size again, could we keep running things the same way? And in truth, the first question changed everything because before we could figure out how to grow, we had to define why we were growing. We didn't want a business that just paid the bills. We wanted something lasting, something generational. The vision was a business that would still be standing long after we were gone, impacting lives, creating opportunities, and touching communities. But I realized very quickly that we couldn't build that kind of business by doing everything ourselves. So I decided to face that fear that held me back for so long. I started doing things that terrified me the most. I began handing things over. And no, that was not easy. It definitely wasn't. Not at first. But I started by identifying the tasks I had no business still doing. Things like staff rotas, ordering and procurement, staff training, basic financial reporting. All of these things could be delegated and other people could do them. We promoted from within. I looked around and saw people who had grown with the business. They knew the culture, they believed in the vision, and most importantly, we trusted them. They didn't need micromanagement. They needed clarity, support, and the authority to act. So we built our first head office team. I reduced the number of people reporting directly to me and set up weekly meetings with just a few key leads. What this did, though, was free up my time. It freed me up to focus on strategy, growth, and leadership, the things that I was actually meant to be doing. Even after I started delegating, I had moments where I couldn't help myself. I'd hover around. I'd ask, have you done this yet? I'd check and double check to make sure that the task had been completed. I found myself watching over the shoulders of the very people I said I trusted. I asked to be copied into every single email. I wanted to be kept in the loop on every decision. On paper, I had delegated, but in reality, I was still doing everything just through other people. And this wasn't working. It really wasn't. The team started to get frustrated, and I could see it. They were open and honest with me, and I would respect them for that. They told me I felt like I didn't trust them, like I was saying one thing, I trust you, but doing the complete opposite by micromanaging every move. And in all honesty, they were right. Me wanting to be copied into every single email, having every decision run past me, it was slowing us down. I was so overwhelmed with messages and updates that I couldn't respond in time, which meant I had become the bottleneck again. I had a decision to make. Do I let go fully, or do I risk losing the trust of the very people who had given me theirs? That was a hard moment for me. These were people who genuinely cared about, people who had grown with the business, who were giving their all, going above and beyond every single day. And the truth is, they made my decision easier. So I made a choice to truly let go, and I trusted them fully. But this time I ensured to set them up for success with the right level of support, training, and accountability. So here's what I did differently this time. I created check-in systems instead of interfering daily. I reminded myself delegation isn't abdication, it's empowerment. And finally, I gave feedback, but I also gave space, plenty of it. And that shift reminded me of something I once read, and it stuck with me. When you're a leader, you're no longer responsible for doing the job. You're now responsible for inspiring, coaching, and mentoring your team to become the very best version of themselves. And that's exactly what I had to learn. My job wasn't to do everything anymore. It was to empower others to do it and do it well. If you're listening to this and thinking, I can't let go, my business will crumble, let me challenge you with this. What if holding on is the very thing that's slowing you down? Here are some practical steps for you to start your delegation journey. Audit your tasks. Rather than everything you do in a typical week, then circle the tasks that only you can do. Everything else is up for delegation. Ask yourself the simple question: what am I doing that someone else could do 80% as well with the right training? This is crucial. It doesn't have to be done perfectly like you would. Document every process, even if it's messy at first. Just get it down, get it out of your head. Get those systems down on paper so that others can follow them. Then you start small. Hand off one task, then another. Build a delegation muscle, like I call it, gradually. It gets easier over time. Then you set regular check-ins. Create a rhythm of accountability, not micromanagement. Your job's to support and not suffocate. And finally, you must celebrate the wins. When your team step up, you need to acknowledge it publicly, generously, and consistently. That's how you build trust and confidence. And let me be honest, this won't be easy. And that's okay. But it is absolutely crucial if you ever want to scale your business in a sustainable way. Parts of the process will be easier to let go than others. For me, payroll was the hardest one. I used to check every line every single month. It took hours, literally hours, but it gave me peace of mind. Eventually, I had to trust the system, and more importantly, trust the person I delegated to do it. Yes, in the early days, mistakes were made. Some of them cost us money, but I trusted the process, and I'm so glad I did, because here is the truth. Mistakes will happen, but if you create an environment of support and guidance, your team will learn. They'll improve, and in the end, they'll surprise you with how capable they really are. I remember the first holiday I took after properly letting go. I was bracing myself for the usual flood of messages and phone calls. I was worried about what would go wrong in the business while I was away. But the phone didn't ring once. Not a single call came through from work. The team had it covered. When I got back, I scheduled debrief meetings with each member of the head office team. I was expecting the usual. the stories of everything they didn't want to bother me with while I was away on holiday. But instead, they calmly told me everything was fine. I even pulled my operations lead aside and asked directly, is there anything I need to know that no one's saying? And she looked me in the eye and said, no, honestly, everything's been handled. That was the moment I knew we'd turn a corner. From that moment on, everything started to click. We began to truly move forward, and the growth was not just steady, it was visible. Everyone knew the roles, everyone played their part. We were finally operating like a well-oiled machine, and honestly, it was refreshing. For the first time in a long time, I had the space to think, to look ahead, to reflect on the direction we were heading as a business, to explore and implement new services, and to build meaningful partnerships that would go on to shape the next chapter of our business. Letting go was one of the hardest things I've had to do as a founder, and experiences taught me just how difficult that process can be. But I have to say this, we were incredibly blessed. We had an amazing team around us, truly the were a godsend. The belief in the business, the work ethic, and the willingness to grow with us made all the difference. And for that, I would always be grateful. So before we close today's episode, I want to leave you with a few key takeaways, the big lessons that really stood out for me, and ones I think every founder should hear. Whether you're in the beginning of your business journey or you're deep in the middle of scaling up, these are the truths I wish I'd embraced earlier. One, doing everything yourself will eventually break you. Trying to control every part of your business might feel like leadership, but it actually limits growth. You become the bottleneck, and that's not sustainable for you, for your team, or your vision. Two, burnout is a signal, not a badge of honor. The signs were clear: exhaustion, declining performance in other branches, frustration at home. These weren't just side effects, they were red flags telling me the way I was working wasn't working. Three, structure without mindset change is pointless. I made changes to roles and reporting lines, but my mindset hadn't caught up. Delegation only works when it's paired with real trust and space, not micromanagement in disguise. Four, a strong leadership team is non-negotiable. You need more than just support. You need accountable, trained, and empowered leaders around you. Investing in them builds the backbone of a scalable business. And finally, letting go isn't a one-time decision. It's a process. The moment I stopped hovering and truly stepped back, my team stepped up. And today, I'm still learning to lead better, challenging others to own more so we can build something that lasts beyond me. In the next episode, I'll be sharing how we turned private services into a profitable side income in our pharmacy. If you've ever wondered how to generate additional revenue beyond NHS dispensing through things like private services or paid consultations, then episode 8 is for you. It's called How We Turned Private Services into Profitable Side Income in Pharmacy. As always, if you enjoyed this episode, make sure you follow, subscribe, like or share, or save it to listen again later. And don't forget to connect with me on social media at _BTC podcast. And remember, the best prescription for success is resilience.